So if you're thinking about getting into Dungeon Defenders, there are a few things that you should know as a player starting out that the game doesn't really tell you.
Oh, spellcasting.
I love this game, but it explains itself like it was made in the basement by a wizard who hates new players, and there's literally no tutorial. At least, I don't think so.
Dungeon Defenders is a 4-player co-op tower defense action RPG.
I have like vague memories of there being a tutorial, but I literally bought a new copy of the game and they just threw me in, so I guess there's not one anymore. Anyways, at first it seems simple. You know, you set up towers, you defend your crystal, kill some goblins, you get some loot. It seems easy enough. And all of a sudden you're trying to figure out DLCs, gear bonuses, upgrades, survival. You're suddenly wondering why your DPS isn't holding up in higher level difficulties. So here are the things that I wish someone had explained to me early when I started out playing Dungeon Defenders, so I didn't waste as much time, money, and emotional stability. So the first thing I wish I knew before I started playing Dungeon Defenders is that DLCs are kind of not optional. You know, you can play through the base campaign with the 4 main heroes of the Huntress, Squire, Apprentice, and Monk, but if you want to go into deeper levels and really get into that grind and that late game content, you're gonna eventually need to buy DLC characters to get past that. You know, at the bare minimum, I would say that you want at least the Series EV and the Summoner.
No.
First of all, the Series EV is very vital to late game builds because her buff beam specifically can double your damage, can double your defense attack rate, and is really important for those late game builds. And the Summoner is great because he has defense units that are separate from the regular defense units called minion units, which is just those added extra defenses that are really gonna work, especially as walls. Now, if you want to go even further, you're gonna start hearing things about heroes like Jester, Hermit, and the Warden. And those aren't really necessary unless you really want to get late into the game, because there are almost stages in the game. There's the campaign, there's late game, there's late game, and there's really late game. And so if you want to get to that end stage and really put in thousands of hours, you're gonna want those extra 3 heroes, the Warden, the Hermit, and the Jester, on top of the Series EV and the Summoner. But I would recommend buying them more as a bundle on sale than each individually if you want to save some money.
I am under the water. Please help me.
And I'm not saying go and buy these DLC characters because people say they're meta. You genuinely need them for these late game maps and difficulties because the enemies get stronger, they get more health, they move faster, and they have more utility that you will need that the main 4 heroes cannot really offer you anymore in these later maps. So I guess the simplest way that I would say is you can start Dungeon Defenders with the 4 main heroes. You can enjoy Dungeon Defenders with the 4 main heroes, but if you want to go deeper, you are going to at least need the Series EV and the Summoner. And if you want to go even deeper than that, you will need the Hermit, the Warden, and the Jester. But only do it if you're still having fun with the game. Don't make it homework before you're having fun. The next thing that the game doesn't really tell you in the beginning is how end of the map rewards work. So when it comes to the end of the way bonuses, there are 3 main ones that you want to look out for. The first one is no core damage, the second one is no hero damage, and the third one is only using weapons. And the third one you're not as likely to get, as in almost all the maps you're going to be using towers. But what's important about these is each of those bonuses multiply the XP you get from completing waves and maps by 33% each time. And that matters because the game is already grindy. So if you know that you can get those extra bonuses and you're mindful of, okay, I need to not take damage, that's going to help you level up faster. Also kind of an odd mechanic with end of the map rewards where you get certain mana and XP bonuses, they're combined. Like the rewards like Knight or Immortal or Trigger Happy. And these you get for doing things like shooting your weapon a lot, or by not taking any damage, or whatever it may be. And these rewards are like maybe like plus 5,000 mana / XP. And those don't really matter as much once you beat the campaign, but it's still useful to know what all those pop-ups are as you complete maps. The next thing that the game doesn't really tell you when it comes to map rewards is that it encourages you to do survival waves, but you don't really know why. And why you should be doing survival is when you want to get better gear, because past wave 20 is when the RNG for the armor and the weapon starts to roll higher and you have better chances for that. But specifically what I want to focus on is the pet rewards. So usually with maps on wave 14, when you beat that on survival, you will get some kind of pet reward. And if you beat that map on wave 25 or some maps wave 30, 35, you will get an even better pet reward. And these are all unique to each map, or at least mostly. And this is why some people are farming maps for gear, are farming maps for mana, are farming maps for pets. Because pets are not just a cute little buddy that you have, they actually can pack a huge boost in your stats. Dungeon Defenders is not really about just beating maps, it's about knowing why you're beating maps. And if you know why you're beating maps, whether it's for pets or gear, this is going to help you when you hit that level 74 to 78 block and you don't really know where to go from there. Having this knowledge of, okay, what I can do next is going to help you from elevating into those later stages of the game, because you know where you can get certain pets, what waves you need to farm past wave 20 on survival maps to get better gear to level up even further. The next thing I wish I knew about Dungeon Defenders that the game doesn't really tell you is how the gear system actually works. When I first started the game, I just thought that if a piece of gear had higher numbers, then that means it was better, and I needed to dump all my mana into it and upgrade it because that was the best piece of gear that I had at that moment. But that's not really the best way to go about it, because if you do that, you can waste a lot of mana. But it's good to know what is a piece of gear that I'm actually going to use long term, and what is a piece of gear that's a stepping stone to get me to the next piece of gear that's better. Now, the first example of this is it comes to set bonuses on gear. So there are about 4 to 5 types of gear. There is leather, pristine, chain, mail, and what else is there? Oh, and plate. And so if you gear your character with only plate or only leather or only chainmail, you will get a certain percent bonus on all of the stats in that gear. For example, it's a 25% bonus to all stats if you're wearing all leather. And I believe it goes up to about a 35% bonus if you're wearing all pristine. The next important piece to know about gear is how resistances work. Resistances can cap at 90% damage reduction on the 4 different types of damage. There is generic damage, there is fire damage, there is poison damage, and there is lightning damage. So if you go into harder content and you feel like you're getting melted instantly, it might not just be that your damage is low, it might be that your resistances suck. And you might not understand where some of this damage is coming from, but the mobs have certain elemental bonuses to them. Like, they do extra fire damage on top of their generic damage. And that's why you may be taking... fuck me. And that's why you may be taking more damage than you think you are, because your resistances are not fully lined up and buffed. Basically, what I want you to be asking yourself as a new player is, what is this gear actually for? Is this just a stepping stone to the next piece of gear because the next map is going to be harder? Is this piece of gear going to be going on to a DPS character? Is this piece of gear going to be going on a tower character, so I don't really care about resistances? It's good knowing what it's for so you can save money and not blow it all on upgrades that you don't actually need. Another thing that I wish I knew is that you want to gear your heroes specifically for what they're for. You know, when you start the campaign, it's good to level, one hero like an apprentice to be very well rounded, because they're going to be the ones that are carrying you to the end of the game. However, when it comes to late game, you're going to want heroes specifically geared for certain things. For example, you're going to want a wall builder specifically geared towards building tower health. For example, the summoner, because you have those extra defense units and you can focus the other units on damage. And then you'll gear a different character, whether that be an apprentice or a hermit or whoever you want to pick, and put all their focus into tower damage. And this is so you're not so spread thin when you're trying to gear your characters. This makes it so your characters are doing exactly what they're supposed to at all times to the best of their capability. This becomes especially important because when it comes to Nightmare, you're really going to want your characters geared correctly, because Nightmare makes things so much more harder. It's not just the enemies have more health and they move faster. There's a lot of different gameplay modifiers that happens when you switch to Nightmare. For example, your hero damage is reduced from your weapons, your projectile speeds are slower, and your towers are actually boosted in damage, but you're going to find that that's a big shift between losing hero damage and gaining tower damage, as you're not going to be able to go out and manage things as much yourself. You're going to really need to have your builds be carrying you. Another good point that I wish I knew earlier is that there are certain soft caps to some towers. And for a really good example of this is the summoner's minions, as the archers have a soft cap at around 1500 to 2000 tower attack rate.
No.
And what I mean by soft cap is there's not really a limit to how fast they can attack per se, but there is huge diminishing returns past the 1500 to 2000 point. And I think part of that is just to make them not look ridiculous as they're spamming arrows at 0.1 seconds. And it's to make them look better as a tower. But this also happens with other towers like the Monk's auras. You'll see a fall off eventually, but that'll happen more late game. You don't really need to worry about that yet, as this is just, you know, a starting out video. But it's good to know that just in case, if you're gearing your characters and you see, hey, this is not adding up math-wise, there could be a soft cap on certain towers. This doesn't really happen with damage though, so you don't have to worry about that. But there is, especially with range and attack rate, so keep an eye out for that. I think it's mainly just so the towers don't break the game. Basically, the final thing I want you to know is that when it comes to gear, you're going to replace a lot of it, so really pick and choose what you want to invest in, and make sure you're gearing your heroes towards what they're specifically to do. You know, make a DPS hero and just get DPS gear on them. Don't try to make a well-rounded character for every single DLC that you have, because you're going to be spreading yourself way too thin. The next thing that I wish I knew about Dungeon Defenders when I first started out is there are a bunch of quality of life hotkeys and certain menu transitions that are really helpful to make your gameplay feel more smoother. For example, if you're in a really slow lobby and people aren't pressing G and you don't really want to kick them, which you can do by the way, press Control G and that will auto start the wave for everyone. It'll ready them all up. You can also spawn in extra characters with the in-game emulator by pressing F6. This will just spawn in the first 4 heroes when you go to swap hero, the heroes that you have at the top. And this is just so you can get more end of the map rewards without replaying one map over and over and over on one hero. And remember, you can get rid of them with F7 and they'll all leave. You can also remap your key bindings like this. You'll have to press the middle mouse wheel, go into your defenses, hover over the defense that you want to remap, and then you'll hold the button that you want it to go to. So for example, with this fireball tower, you'll want it to go to 6 or 7 or 8 or 9. You'll just hold that key and it will remap there so you can use it more easily. A couple of other small ones is you can hide the door, the mob count on the doors to see what kind of mobs are coming. You can press O, hide them, turn them on, turn them off. They kind of get annoying, you know, when you're farming a map and you have those huge things in front of your face and you already know what's coming anyway, so you can hide those. You can also take a glamour shot if you press Q and take a look at your character, see your accessories, and see what you're wearing. Another thing that's nice is how to inspect players, and this can be fun if you're doing really long survival waves and you want something else to do and everything's upgraded. But it's also good to inspect other players because you can see what other people are building and maybe why they're having more success doing maps while you're not. Like maybe they have this certain piece of gear and it has a bunch of stats, and there's no shame in just like typing in chat like, hey, where'd you get that weapon? And maybe they can give you some pointers, as the community is pretty helpful and you can get a lot of good tips from players that have been playing for a long time. The next thing that I wish I knew is I wish I knew how to navigate player shops. And they're really helpful to, you know, kind of get an easy pass to get some extra gear if you don't want to farm some. But I would say when you're starting out, avoid player shops just so you don't get scammed or waste your money. I would say avoid player shops until you beat the Eternia shards, probably on Nightmare. But my typical rule of thumb when I go into a shop is if it looks too expensive, it probably is too expensive. And be careful if you're trading with other players. You know, not everyone out there is looking for your best interest. Some people are out there to make money. The last thing that I wish I knew when starting out is community really matters with Dungeon Defenders, and I think new players should especially know that getting help from other people is not cheating. You know, it's okay to have a friend boost you a couple levels. As long as you can still play the game on your own, then you're probably okay. And I know it seems a little cliche to say, oh, community matters, but with Dungeon Defenders, especially how old this game is, it's especially true. And, you know, most players are very helpful and will be willing to help you out and give you some tips and tricks if you need help with a build or certain game mechanics that you're not sure about. And so don't be afraid to reach out to players and get some help. A lot of the game knowledge is not perfectly explained in the game, hence the name of this video. A lot of the knowledge is in YouTube videos, Discord servers, Reddit posts, and many different stuff. And I think that's almost what makes the game sort of beautiful in a way, is that the community is what keeps it going. And I think for the Dungeon Defenders franchise, that's especially true. Because without the community, this game would be so much harder to understand. If you don't know what map to farm next, someone probably has a guide. I also want to thank you guys for a lot of the love I've received on this game and the videos. I did not expect this many views and interaction with you guys. I really started this channel just kind of as to be like a library for the random bullshit that I do and wanted to upload. I will be honest, I feel like I've pigeonholed myself a little bit with being known as like a Dungeon Defenders YouTuber with the few videos I have, but I don't really know what I'm going to do with this channel now that I think about it, because it's kind of gone somewhere else than I thought it would, because I didn't think anyone would actually watch any of this stuff. You know, I always thought when I was a kid that I don't know, just Dungeon Defenders means a lot to me, and I'm glad that I could have some part in, you know, bringing some love into the game and having people play it again, because it really was part of my childhood, and I really love the game, even with all of its, you know, problems and stuff. But yeah, thank you guys for the love, and I'll see you in the next one.
Cause I be the baddie beat.